Despite being a fan of rogues, to me they're a double-edged sword. What I mean is that finding the right one for me is easier said than done. Hades is probably my favorite rogue, and that's because the progress I made during previous runs would spill over into subsequent ones. When certain rogues don't make use of that, I find it harder to play/review them. It's because this form of gameplay requires more time/effort that I don't have. These games aren't impossible to beat, but when it comes between a 5 to 10 hour linear game or a rogue that may take 20 hours and largely depends on luck, I'm going with the former. My point isn't to speak badly of rogues. I enjoy them, but like I said, it takes a particular kind of rogue to fully get my attention. Void Wizard had a lot to offer right from the start. I initially started playing on my Steam Deck, but when I realized that I was better off playing with keyboard and mouse, I made the switch over to PC. The difference was pretty much night and day. On PC, I could move fast and smoothly. This was very helpful because VW features fast-paced action. As a result of that action, you're sometimes required or indirectly encouraged to make use of VW's maneuverability in order to dodge. Not only could I jump around and eventually make use of trampolines to pogo around, simple left and right movements made it easy to avoid incoming fire. I was actually surprised how quickly I took to dodging enemy projectiles. It's because most games have their own particular rhythm when it comes to dodging/parrying. In VW, I didn't have to put much thought into that. This led to me quickly gaining confidence and wanting to keep progressing. If the entry barrier for a game is too high, I'm less likely to stay committed to playing it. Seeing as how that wasn't the case with VW, it was easy to keep playing and see what else it had to offer. Even though I regularly play a lot of FPS games, I don't really play fantasy-based ones such as VW. I've played Hexen and other similar FPS games in the past, but nowadays I'm more about boomer shooters based around guns. VW is heavily based on being a wizard, and as a result of that, your main weapons consist of wands. Pretty early on, I saw that VW offers a variety of them. What's cool was being able to dual wield. Sometimes I could get two of the same wands, so it'd be wands akimbo. Other times I could find a different wand that added something to the gameplay I'd grown used to. I especially liked the fire/explosion wand. It was easier to take out multiple enemies at once with it, and at one point I relied on it to progress faster and more safely. What stood out to me was that VW features a gun. Even the game itself makes a joke about that. When you do manage to find a gun, the description for it was, "Is that a gun?" I thought that was funny because it's clear that a gun in a game about fantasy/wizards stands out like a sore thumb, but the simple idea of a wizard with a gun made me laugh. I'm getting towards the point that VW is one of those games where what you see is what you get, but as I've stated in past reviews, that isn't a bad thing. I wasn't surprised to hear cheesy fantasy music playing. The music sounds like it's straight out of an early 90s PC game. It was cheesy, but it was appropriate. It was after I completed my first full run of the game that I noticed that it features more varied music. I would have liked had that been the case from the beginning of the game, but at the same time, seeing as how this counts as New Game Plus, something I'll eventually get into, it's easy to understand why that would be saved for a later point in the game. VW is a procedurally generated rogue. While that's true, after a while you start to see the same rooms, and it's clear how linear it is when compared to other games like it. It's not entirely a bad thing, but after around 90 minutes or so, I felt that I'd seen the bulk of what VW had to offer, at least when it came to level design. I'm sure that others wouldn't like this at all and would prefer more randomness when it comes to level generation, but that still doesn't take away from VW's replayability. The fact that I pretty much beat VW in one sitting goes to show how much it has to offer when it comes to replayability. It's arguable as to whether or not VW really is replayable, but from my point of view, it is. It's because I kept playing over and over again for around 4 hours. With lesser games, I would have thrown in the towel sooner rather than later, but I felt satisfied with what VW had to offer. Something else that stood out to me was how great it was to quickly find out that VW is the kind of game where you can shut off your mind and just play. I like that because it's great for multitasking. Whether it be with a movie/show or a podcast, you don't need to be fully concentrated when playing VW. I know I'm not the only one that will multitask when it comes to gaming, and it's helpful when games lean towards that kind of gameplay. You could say that any game could be combined with any other activity, but the truth is that there's a point when something will suffer, whether it's because of playing a subtitled game or having to concentrate in order to avoid being killed. The latter was something I had in mind while playing, but it wasn't to the point where I was forced to focus on it and it alone. Like I mentioned before, VW features a New Game Plus mode. When I first beat the game, I was forced to choose between continuing again from the start in a looped sort of way or heading off into the real world. At first, I wanted to see what the looped gameplay would lead to. That's when I realized it was pretty much VW's version of New Game Plus. I quickly learned that New Game Plus was more ideal straight from a previous run, because going straight into it with nothing besides your basic loadout would lead to death pretty quickly. It's because of how the enemies became harder/faster while you pretty much stayed the same. Your skills as a player improved, but after a while it was easy to end up overwhelmed. For some, it's nice that the content/challenge is there, but I was fine with what I got out of VW, and since I saw the credits roll, I decided to move on. While I do think that Void Wizard is an enjoyable game that will have players coming back for more, I don't think it's the kind of game that I'll reinstall at a later point in time to try to get more out of it. Some people have the mindset that a game has to more or less be evergreen to be thought of as good. The thing is, if a game is good for the number of hours that you play it, I'd say it was worth playing. There are some special games out there, much like the classic Resident Evil games, that'll have you coming back for more simply because they're that good. Overall, I'd say that Void Wizard is a middle-of-the-road kind of game. It's not terrible, but at the same time, it's not great to the point where I'd say that you need to buy and play it right now. Chances are that if you enjoy FPS games and rogues, you'll at least get something out of it, but from what I've seen of other games from both genres, there are better ones out there. It's possible that others will get more out of Void Wizard than I did, mainly by using it as a game to kill time while commuting, but seeing as how I'm sometimes thinking of the next game while playing one, I can't speak for everyone and say that'll be the case for them. How do you feel about games that give you the chance to finish playing without seeing the real ending? Would featuring a weapon that's out of place in a game bother you? Are you okay with aspects of a game being reused to the point where it's noticeable? If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much for watching.